For more than 50 years, they sat locked away inches Pentagon vaults. Photographs taken by American astronauts 250,000 miles from Earth. Voice transcripts of trained military pilots describing things that should not have been there. On May 8, 2026, the United States government finally released them. 162 declassified files, and among them, a photograph from December 1972 that NASA, to this day, cannot explain. This is the story of the Apollo 17 unidentified flying object files, and what 3 astronauts saw on the final crewed mission to the Moon. December 11, 1972. Apollo 17 enters lunar orbit. On board are 3 men who will become the last humans, so far, to walk on another world. Commander Eugene Cernan, Command Module Pilot Ronald Evans, and Lunar Module Pilot Harrison Schmitt, the only trained geologist ever sent to the Moon. Their mission was scientific: collect rocks, map the Taurus-Littrow Valley, conduct experiments. By every public account, the mission was a triumph. Schmitt and Cernan spent over 22 hours walking the lunar surface, the longest moonwalks Inch's history. But somewhere Inch's the official mission transcripts, buried Inch's technical chatter about oxygen levels and trajectory corrections. The astronauts said things that nobody outside the Pentagon was meant to hear. Harrison Schmitt's voice, captured on the mission tape, describes something extraordinary outside his spacecraft window. "There's a whole bunch of big ones on my window down there," Schmitt said. "Just bright. It looks like the 4th of July out of Ron's window." The 4th of July. A trained scientist, a Harvard-educated geologist who would later serve as a United States Senator, comparing what he was seeing inches the vacuum of space to a fireworks display. Mission Commander Eugene Cernan, a Navy captain with thousands of flight hours, was even more specific. According to the newly declassified Pentagon files, Cernan described, quote, several flashing, rotating phenomenon that he assessed as corresponding to physical objects inches space, rather than a purely optical phenomenon. Read that again. Physical objects. Not reflections, not lens flares, not ice crystals venting from the spacecraft. Physical objects observed by a man who had already flown to the Moon once before on Apollo 10, who knew exactly what space was supposed to look like. Data. Type stat value 162 unit files, context declassified Pentagon unidentified flying object documents released dramatic true. The 162 declassified files were released under a presidential initiative called PURSUE, the Presidential Unsealing and Reporting System for UAP Encounters, an order signed to compel transparency on, quote, alien and extraterrestrial life. And among those 162 files, one photograph stands out above all others. The image is grainy, black and white, taken from the Apollo 17 command module as it orbited the Moon. Inches the upper portion of the frame against the absolute blackness of space. There are 3 bright dots, arranged inches, a perfect triangular formation. The Pentagon's official statement on this photograph is perhaps the most telling part of the entire release. They wrote, and I'm quoting directly, "There is no consensus about the nature of the anomaly. No consensus. After 54 years of analysis, after every imaging expert, every astrophysicist, every intelligence analyst who could be cleared to look at this photograph examined it. The most powerful military and scientific apparatus on Earth came back with the same answer. We don't know what this is. Now, skeptics will tell you these could be lens artifacts, reflections inside the camera, cosmic ray strikes on the film emulsion, and those are reasonable hypotheses. They are exactly the explanations NASA would have reached for Inch's 1972. But here's the problem. If those explanations were sufficient, the Pentagon would have used them. They didn't. Instead, after more than 5 decades, they admitted, Inch's writing, that no consensus exists. And Apollo 17 was not the first time. July 1969. Apollo 11. The first crewed moon landing. Neil Armstrong, Michael Collins, and Buzz Aldrin. According to the same Pentagon disclosure, Aldrin himself described observing what he called a sizeable object close to the Moon. And then something even stranger. The crew reported a fairly bright light source that they felt, according to the transcripts, could be a laser. A laser, inches 1969, 250,000 miles from Earth. The technology to project a coherent laser beam that distance, with enough intensity to be perceived as bright by astronauts inside a shielded spacecraft, did not exist on Earth, inches 1969. Arguably, it does not exist with that capability today. So what was projecting it? Data. Type comparison label A. Official NASA explanation. Nothing unusual. Label B. Pentagon 2026 release. No consensus on the anomaly. For decades, the official line from NASA was simple. Astronauts saw nothing they couldn't explain. There were no UFOs. There were no anomalies. There were only ice particles, sunlight reflections, and the imaginations of men who had spent too long inches zero gravity. That official line is now, demonstrably, a lie. Because the Pentagon's own documents, released under federal order, contradict it. The astronauts did report objects, they did photograph anomalies, and the United States government did classify those reports for over half a century. The question is why. Data. Type timeline title. The Apollo Unidentified Flying Object Cover-Up. 1969. Apollo 11 crew reports bright light and sizable object near Moon. 1972. Apollo 17 photographs 3 dots inches triangular formation. 1972 to 2026. Files classified for 54 years. 2026. Pentagon releases 162 documents under Pursuit Initiative. There are 3 competing theories, and I want to walk you through each one with the seriousness it deserves. The first theory is the most conventional. The objects were natural phenomena. Space debris from previous missions, frozen propellant venting from the spacecraft, micrometeorites catching sunlight. Under this theory, the Pentagon's no consensus statement is simply bureaucratic caution. Nobody wants to be the official who says definitively what something is, when there's a small chance they could be wrong. The second theory is more troubling. The objects were classified human technology. Surveillance assets, perhaps Soviet, perhaps American, that the public was never meant to know about. This would explain the prolonged classification. It would explain the laser observation by Aldrin. And it would explain why even today, the Pentagon refuses to commit to an explanation. The third theory is the one most viewers came to hear. The objects were not human. They were not natural. They were intelligently controlled craft observing the Apollo missions from outside our technological ability to identify them. I am not here to tell you which theory is correct. I am here to tell you what the documents say. And what the documents say is this. 3 of the most highly trained pilots, inches human history, men chosen from thousands of applicants for their psychological stability and observational accuracy, reported seeing things they could not explain. Their government photographed those things. Then their government locked those photographs away for 54 years. Eugene Cernan died inches January 2017. He never publicly elaborated on what he saw outside his spacecraft window. Ronald Evans died inches 1990. Harrison Schmitt is, as of this recording, still alive. He has spoken cautiously about the mission but has never confirmed nor denied what the transcripts now reveal. The men who saw it cannot, or will not, tell us what it was. What we are left with is a photograph. A grainy black and white image, taken inches December 1972, showing 3 bright dots, inches a triangular formation above the surface of the moon. We have the Pentagon's admission that no one can explain it. We have the voices of dead astronauts describing fireworks and rotating physical objects. We have Buzz Aldrin's memory of a light that should not have existed. For 54 years, they kept it secret. The question now is not whether something was there. The documents prove something was there. The question is what else remains inches those Pentagon vaults. What other photographs? What other transcripts? What other voices? Captured on tape across the void of space, describing things they were ordered never to discuss. The Pursuit Initiative released 162 files. The intelligence community estimates the full Apollo-era UAP archive contains thousands more. We have only seen the beginning. If this story disturbed you, if it made you question what else we have not been told, subscribe. Because the next file release is already being prepared, and what comes next, according to those who have seen the inventories, makes Apollo 17 look like a footnote. The truth was always up there. We just weren't allowed to look at it. Until now.